As we continue to discuss Anzac Day and the solemnity of the occasion, I wanted to bring in a fantastic ambassador for the Anzac spirit, former director of the Australian War Memorial and its new chairman, Dr. Brendan Nelson, who joins us now from the War Memorial in Canberra. Dr. Nelson, thank you for your time. What are your reflections today on Anzac Day?
Well, today has been particularly reassuring again, Peter, because we've seen such immense numbers of Australians that have come out to our commemorative services, the length and breadth of Australia, and of course returning, as we've seen, to Gallipoli and France. And we don't say it in so many words, but at a time of immense geopolitical realignment, where too often we seem to be upset with something or somebody, where we're a traumatised people, having been through floods and fire and drought and a pandemic. Here we are on Anzac Day commemorating the service and sacrifice of nearly 2 million Australian men and women who wear and have worn our uniform, 102,800 Australians who've given their lives for us in war and in peace. And we don't say it in so many words, but we're recommitting ourselves to one another. I'm very proud to be an Australian.
People said, once we pass the centenary of the Gallipoli landing, things might fall away in terms of observance. I know we were hit by COVID, but that hasn't been the case, has it?
It certainly hasn't. And what's happening is that Australians are looking for and finding meaning in what it means to be an Australian, in the qualities and the values they see and are represented in the uniforms of the Royal Australian Navy, the Australian Army and the Royal Australian Air Force. And I reflect often on that young nurse, Kirsty Bowden, the 28-year-old nurse from Adelaide, who in the terrorist attack on the London Bridge in early June 2017, when everyone was running away from the carnage, she ran toward it. One of 8 fatally stabbed that day. Her last words were, "I'm a nurse, I have to go." And her family said of her that she was selfless, caring and brave. And when you ask yourself, what is it that makes people amongst us selfless, caring and brave? It's honouring men and women who manifest those qualities and values.
People watching tonight can see that you're such a student of history, and you always, I think, honour the military history of this country. So in that vein, I want to ask you, next week we'll commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Coral Sea. Given recent headlines around the issues in the Solomon Islands, the strategic lessons of history are still significant, aren't they?
The Battle of the Coral Sea, it was, in my opinion, the true origins of the Anzac alliance formalised in 1951. In the Battle of the Coral Sea, the United States and Royal Australian Navies together inflicted a strategic defeat over Japan. And then the following month, the Japanese were routed at the Battle of Midway. In the defeat of the Japanese Navy at the Battle of the Coral Sea, it forced the Japanese to abandon a seaborne landing into Port Moresby, and instead they would have to come from the north of New Guinea across the hinterland to get to Kokoda and to Moresby. And that was the critical importance of that battle and the strategic defeat of the Japanese. And it laid, as I said, Peter, the origins for the Anzac alliance.
When you were the director of the Australian War Memorial, you were a driving proponent of its redevelopment. You wanted it to stay modern and in touch with future generations. You're now the chairman. That was a decision announced late last week. Give us an update on this massive project that's underway. I know my viewers have an affection for the War Memorial, a reverence for the War Memorial, so I'd like to know how that update's coming along.
Well, thanks, Peter. In my very first week, my second day, the 18th of December 2012, I asked the memorial staff when were we doing an Afghanistan exhibition. After a long pause, I was told it would be at least 10 years, longer. We had no space, I was told we had no money. We opened 8 months later, after a few internal battles. The project to expand the memorial, which is $500 million over 9 years, about the amount of money we spend on defence in 4 days, I might add, is entirely dedicated to telling the stories of young Australians, the 100,000 veterans we've created over the last 20 years, in Afghanistan, Iraq, East Timor, the Solomon Islands, a major expansion in the peacekeeping story. What those young Australians did in Rwanda and Somalia, in many ways as bad, if not worse, than what they've confronted in wars. For the first time, we'll also be telling the story of what Australia actually does to try to prevent war in the first place. The project, which has had all of the approvals, and I particularly thank and pay tribute to Prime Minister Scott Morrison, Treasurer Frydenberg and former Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, supported steadfastly by Bill Shorten and now Anthony Albanese for the project. We're well advanced in the 5 major parts of the project. The largest ones that Australians can see is the underground southern entrance at the front, where a brand new southern entrance and galleries are being built, and then the old Anzac Hall has been demolished. A major excavation is occurring there, and a new Anzac Hall, broader, deeper, on 2 levels. And all I can say is that every Australian will be proud of the world-class architecture almost as much as they will be the stories of the men and women that will be told inside it.
All strength to your arm. I hope everything goes well in the next little while as development hits pace, but I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Congratulations on your new role as well, Dr. Brendan Nelson.